Get full episodes of The Damage Report as a podcast on iTunes and Android, and you can watch the live show every weekday on YouTube TV. I want to talk about the way that the president and the right-wing media has addressed what's going on here. And I'm going to lump in a little bit of the centrist media as well, because they're both sides' rhetoric has been distressing too. On yesterday's program, I made the prediction, this is before Donald Trump had said anything about these bombings yet, that he would not take a strong stand against what appears to be the most widespread coordinated attempt at mass assassinations in American history. And I guess at that point, it was at least a little bit risky because we didn't know for sure. And who knows, maybe his handlers would rein him in and he'd be the president he needs to be. Maybe he'd become president that day, as people love to joke. So here is what I said on yesterday's program. Now, supposedly later on today, he is going to say something. I'm going to make a prediction and I hope that I'm wrong. I think he is going to advance his narrative of left-wing violence. And he's going to find some way to do that, even though all of the targets of these attempted acts of terrorism have been Democratic politicians and members of the media that have been attacked on the right as if they are a part of the left. Okay, so let me just first say I find it pretty unbearable when people in the media show videos of them making predictions, but I think that in this case it is important because the reason I made that prediction, the reason many of you might have felt like there was a good chance it would come true, is because of all that we've learned about Donald Trump, and not just Donald Trump, but the relationship that he has with the right media and his base. So I made that prediction. Now I'm going to read a couple of quotes that he said at his rally last night. And then we're going to talk about what was in those quotes and what was not in those quotes. So here's a few things that Donald Trump said. Those engaged in the political arena must stop treating political opponents as being morally defective. No one should carelessly compare political opponents to historical villains, which is done often. It's done all the time. It's got to stop. We should not mob people in public spaces or destroy public property. So again, the concern, and I think it's an understandable concern, is that someone is attempting to kill people, and he goes back to don't mob people in public places. Don't spit on someone in a restaurant, don't scream at them at a Kroger or whatever. That is what Donald Trump chose to talk about. He also said don't compare people to historical villains. So he's saying don't call people Nazis, even though there are multiple literal Nazis and neo-Nazis running as Republicans in the primaries and the general election in this cycle. So on the eve of an incredibly well-coordinated mass attempt at political terrorism, domestic terrorism here in the US, he is instead doing exactly what I predicted. He is talking about Republicans being shouted at and Republicans being called Nazis, because that is the main concern. He goes on to say, the media also has a responsibility to set a civil tone and to stop the endless hostility and constant negative and oftentimes false attacks and stories. So if it was not clear enough already, CNN, which was the target of one of these bombs, you are at fault. You are the reason that you were almost blown up. He is literally blaming the victim in this case, while, let's note, not even naming the victim. He goes on to say, this is not just an offhand comment, now it's on Twitter, the most, I guess, the most important avenue for expression by Donald Trump. A very big part of the anger we see today in our society is caused by the purposefully false and inaccurate reporting of the mainstream media that I refer to as fake news. It has gotten so bad and hateful that it is beyond description. Mainstream media must clean up its act fast. So, when someone tries to blow up CNN, it is CNN's fault, okay? And if they don't clean up their act, hey, maybe someone will blow them up. That's just a thing that might happen. Now, what's interesting is that in that tweet and in his rally performances, he did not name Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Maxine Waters, CNN, all of the people that have been targeted. He didn't name any of them. There was no expression of individualized, specific compassion or concern for any of the people that were almost blown up. That again has got to be a historical first when it comes to a terror attack or an attempted terror attack in America. A complete lack of concern about them. And by the way, sources are also saying he didn't reach out to any of the attempted victims here. So all of these people, despite the fact that he's got them on his phone, he could call Barack Obama anytime he wants. Someone tried to murder the last president of the United States, and the current president of the United States doesn't even feel like it's worth DMing him about. And so don't actually acknowledge any of the specific targets. Instead, pivot to blaming the literal victims themselves for the violence that almost certainly one of your supporters is instigating. That is what he is doing, and he is being backed up at every stage by right-wing media. On Fox News yesterday, they had guests on saying that this was probably a left-wing stunt to get higher turnout in the midterms. There's no evidence of that whatsoever, but Fox News, a legitimate news organization, is just running with it. Rush Limbaugh and others on Twitter were specifically saying that this is probably a false flag, so you no longer need to go to Alex Jones. Sure, he's off YouTube, doesn't matter. Just go to Rush Limbaugh, go to Laura Ingraham, all of that, the same exact thing. And in the same way that Donald Trump did, do you know what Sean Hannity's coverage of these historic attempted acts of domestic terror were? He attacked Hillary Clinton and Maxine Waters for their rhetoric. So someone tried to murder these two high-profile female politicians, and he attacked the victims themselves. Now, a little bit later on the show, we're gonna have a response from Maxine Waters, but let's just acknowledge that, has this ever happened before? Such utter lack of concern where the right-wing media cannot even, for one news cycle, pretend to care about domestic terror attacks. They couldn't even get through one show. Some of these people don't even have to do a full hour, and they couldn't do it. They could not manage it. They couldn't go one day on Twitter without blaming the victims. And so if you are out there, if you're the bomber, do you feel like, maybe I shouldn't do this? Maybe, maybe Donald Trump doesn't actually support this? Is that actually the message that you're getting? And I understand that you're not supposed to imply anything about the motivations of the person who did the bombing. And many people will say, we don't know, we should just wait and find out. And sure, we will wait and we will find out. But when all of the people who've been targeted are Democratic politicians, the specific targets of Donald Trump's ire constantly, whether it's Maxine Waters or De Niro, I mean, look, if you were out there and you were attempting to come up with an enemies list based purely on Donald Trump's rhetoric, who hasn't yet been hit on that list that you would have put together? I'm honestly trying, I guess Michael Avenatti hasn't had a suspicious package show up. He should probably be concerned because he's just about the only high profile individual in America that Donald Trump regularly talks about that has not received a package like this, filled with shards of glass and explosive materials. All the rest, even if it's someone who just once said F Trump on an awards show, or if it's a congresswoman that to a random American should just be a random person of Congress. There are literally hundreds, and yet Maxine Waters is the one that is targeted. Does anyone question why that is? We know exactly why that is. We know exactly why this list of targets has been put together in the way that it is. The only silver lining is that so far, none of the devices have actually claimed a life. But we're in day 2, God only knows what day 3 will bring. Thank you very much for watching this clip from The Damage Report. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and ring the bell on YouTube to get notifications of our new videos. And of course, you can catch the full Damage Report live every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific on TYT Network on YouTube TV.